I'm sitting here with Rocky Elmore, and Rocky, thanks for sitting down again with me today.
No problems. Pleasure.
And I wanted to, the area that we went to yesterday, and we'll show some of the footage here shortly, but the area that we went to yesterday, we talk about the Sasquatch story that you had by the airport.
Yeah, the little glider strip area that we visited. Yeah, that was in the spring of 1995. And I was still on the training unit with the U.S. Border Patrol, and we had went out for a nighttime operation responding to a sensor. And we had kind of gotten lost our way as we were walking around there and was unable to find the trail we were looking for. So we just wound up paralleling the Otai River that we seen yesterday. And we heard this large splash over there, and it was a very unnatural splash. It didn't sound like people running across the water or anything like that. So we immediately went over there to check it out. And as we got closer, it just started taking on a very strange, unusual feel to it. And we got up to the water, and we noticed right off the bat there were 4 or 5 coyotes there, and they were all looking into the water too. They were acting quite strange. They were very quiet, not sounding off, not raising the alarm, which they normally would do. And they allowed us to just walk right up and stand next to them. And we're all looking at the river together, trying to find out what had made this splash. And we all looked for a while, and nothing was visible. We couldn't see anything. We were able to see across the river. And after the coyotes actually were acting quite nervous and scared, and they actually just wound up leaving the area before we did. We continued to look around a little while longer. We looked up and down the sides of the river for footprints. We could not find any footprints for anyone going in or coming out. We did see our own footprints, and we saw those for the coyotes, and no other animals, no mountain lions, bear, nothing else was there. So we just gave up on it and continued on with our patrol and started following the river toward the lake. Then a short time later, we heard a scope operator that was operating in the area, and he had set up to help us and other agents that was going to work that general area. And he had set up so he would have a good view of the area that we seen yesterday. And he started, he had called these 2 agents in to work a group. And as they got out walking toward the group to try to work them, he suddenly called them off. And his reason for that was that some large predator had come up from the Otay River and was following them around. And he was concerned for their safety and told them they needed to leave the area. And it was kind of just dropped at that point. The next night when we come in to report for duty, he talked to, one of the supervisors talked a little bit more about that situation with the predator. Now, whatever this was that had come up from the river that followed these 2 agents was likely the very same thing that had caused the splash where we were, because there was only a short distance, and the river was going to take whatever it was in the river, following the river up. It was going to walk right in front of where this scope was operating. So we knew they were talking about the same thing. And at that time, they just referred to it as some large predator, and they said it could have even been a mountain lion or something, but if it was the largest one we had ever seen. And that was kind of the talk of the next few days, and then it kind of died away. A few months later, the fellow that was operating that scope took a transfer out of state with another job. So he told a few of the other agents what he had actually seen that night, so the story got out.
Yeah.
And what he had seen was some kind of bipedal creature that walked like a man had come up from the Otay River. And we've seen how heavily that river has kind of like a canopy over it. So,
it's very heavily brushed.
Very heavily brushed. But then once you get off the river, it's quite open, quite easy to see. And this creature had walked up and started to follow these 2 agents around. And as he got up close behind the agents, then the size of the creature became apparent. And I believe the words that I always heard to describe it was that the creature towered over the agents, and it dwarfed both of the agents and had a massive heat signature to it, larger than any bear could have been. followed the agents around at very close range. The agents seemed to be unaware of it, and then they were called off and left the area.
Yeah, I was surprised how green the area was, how much cover there actually is in that area.
Yeah, that river runs all the time. It is actually a very, very small river, but it's always got water in it, where many of them in that area are actually dry most of the year. But that one's always running. And so that canopy is there all the time.
Yeah.
And even as the several wildfires have swept through that area and burned off most of the cover through the years, but the canopy over that river has always maintained constant.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really interesting area, especially when we were checking out yesterday. I was really shocked by how much brush. It's deceiving as you drive down the highway and you look off to the left and right. It looks pretty bare. I mean, you'll see a little bit of green.
It appears to be very open.
Yeah, it appears to be very open, but it's deceiving when you get out there because it's not. I wanted to ask you, that's not far from the Proctor Valley Monster. I know we went and kind of looked for that, but as a crow flies, I mean, it's really not that far away from.
As a crow flies, it would probably be no further than about a mile.
Yeah.
I know there's just one ridge line. He would have to hop over one ridge line, and then he would be right into that area, right off. I haven't been on Proctor Valley in quite some time, and as we've seen yesterday, the housing has grown right up to it.
Yeah.
And even into it.
I wanted to ask you about the Devil Dog.
The Devil Dog was a story passed to me from an older retired agent. I heard it since I wrote the book, so it's not in the book. It occurred in Campo's area, and I want to say probably somewhere around Barrett Junction, maybe. And the story goes was these two agents were laid in. This was years ago. Two agents were laid in. They were trying to work some traffic, and as they were, the brush was short in the area, so they were actually down low behind the brush in a kneeling position, most likely. And they were approached by some kind of a very large dog-looking creature. It had red eyes, it had oversized teeth, and
was it on four legs or two?
It was on four legs. They reported it as being on four legs. But they said the back half was very similar to a horse. Now, they didn't explain in great detail the story I heard, so I don't know if they meant it was a hoofed animal like a horse, or if it just had very tall, muscular hind legs like a horse would. It seemed to be much larger than what a regular dog would be. The creature was quite menacing. It didn't injure them. It walked away in time. They went back to the station, and they were talking about it with some of the other guys back at the station. About an hour later, two other agents come in, and they started talking about seeing this creature that looked like it was a mixture of dog and horse and red eyes, a very menacing looking animal.
Was this at night?
It was at night. I'm not sure if it's just a swing shift or a graveyard shift, but it was nighttime. The other two agents had seen this creature run out in front of them across the road. And so there was four witnesses, all of them Border Patrol agents, saw the same creature about an hour apart and had the same description.
Now the red eyes, were they shining lights at it?
No, they were not. According to the story I heard. And it makes sense. Well, the one that ran in front of the vehicle, obviously the vehicle lights would have picked that up. So they did not say, from what I heard, anything about the eye color. But the two agents laid in on the trail said something about the red eyes. It's very unlikely they would have shined a light. Now, after they saw the creature, they may have shined a light on it to try to identify it better.
Yeah. The area that we went to yesterday, and we'll show some of that here in a second, but the area that we went to yesterday, where, can you retell the ghost stories that in that one weird location?
That's Marone Valley Road, and it seems to be the central area of the majority of the ghost stories that I ever heard in my time at Brownfield and our surrounding area. And also I heard several ghost stories from Campo agents and El Cajon agents when they had that area, that their stories also concentrated in Marone Valley and seems to be somewhat near those gates. At some point in the past, and I'm not sure when it was, and it could have been a couple of different points, there was a settlement back in the early 1800s, and they had been subject of a Native American raid, and it had killed most of the people on that ranch in that settlement there. And then in the early 1900s and late 1800s, there was a lot of silver mining, and again, there was some kind of a settlement down there. And you can see some of the leftover rock walls where people had once lived, and it's quite old. And that seems to be where these spirits and apparitions and ghosts seems to come from that time. It doesn't seem to be related to people crossing the border illegally in present times coming over.
Yeah.
There are several apparitions that are seen without their faces walking around down there. They'll be encountered. The agent will describe it as getting very close. The apparition will turn towards them, and then at that time they'll see that there's just a dark mass where there should be a face. The predominant one down there seems to be this little girl about 3 years old. She's always dressed in white. Some people think she's in her nightgown, others think it's a dress, but she's always in white. She's about 3 years old. I've not heard a physical description of her as far as her hair color, eye color, anything like that. On rare occasions, she has also been seen without a face. All of the apparitions are interactive. They're not residual type hauntings, so it's not like they're walking across the road every night at the same time. They're showing up different places. They're covering various. They might be seen 5 miles away from where they previously were seen. I know the little girl in white seems to be roaming an area as much as 10 square miles.
Well, and when you say interactive, you mean
they come up, they present themselves to the person, usually a Border Patrol agent. They present themselves to them. They stare at them right in the eye. If it's one of the little girl in particular, because she is often seen with the face. Some of the others are not seen with the face. The ones without a face seem to walk away and lure the person up behind them. And then when the agent gets close enough, they turn around and face them. And that's when they find out they're faceless. The little girl, on the other hand, seems to be seen a little more at a distance, and she approaches them head on. Stares directly at them. Each encounter is slightly different from the one before.
Yeah, there was an agent that wrecked his truck, didn't he?
An agent got, and this was the time when the little girl was actually seen without a face. We were stopped at the gate for a while. They've actually taken those gates down. I'm not really sure why they've taken them down, but the gates have been taken down. And it was at that gate, the agent got out to open the gate, and the little girl started approaching him. Again, it was nighttime, and this time she did not have a face, and continued to approach him, and he got so shook up, he ran back to his truck, tried to escape the area, and wrecked the truck, and 3 days later, resigned from the Border Patrol.
And that spot right there where the gate's at, is that mainly where this little girl's always seen?
She has been seen all the way up to Highway 94, which is probably 4 to 5 miles away. There's a cane thicket or a bamboo thicket, and now I hear that a Whack and Hut driver, we used to have Whack and Hut personnel would come take our prisoners and haul them back for us. A Whack and Hut driver saw an image in that cane thicket one time. He took a picture and he shared it with an agent. And it is supposedly that little girl in white.
Oh, really?
They're trying to find it, trying to find the picture, and will share it with me if they're able to. I've not seen it myself.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Now, the other story you had is that tree right there by where the gates were taken down. You said there were some secondhand stories of agents pulling in there and seeing people hung in trees.
I've heard some stories, most of them secondhand. I did recently just get a very short first-hand story from one of the agents. After I wrote the book, a female agent came out and told me that she had seen that once too, and that every time she got to that gate, all she could visualize was those people hanging from that tree over the gate. Again, I don't know what the story is behind that, if it was part of a massacre of earlier times or not.
That's crazy. Well, thanks, Rocky. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Had a good time checking these areas out.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Memories.
I appreciate you taking us out. Thank you very much.